Welcome to CBD Expo Midwest. This is actually our 17th conference, 17th CBD Expo, and we're returning to Indy. So, hello, Indy. Hi again. We are coming in from California, and my company is based there, Mace Media Group. And we publish Terpenes and Testing Magazine, Extraction Magazine, CBD Health and Wellness Magazine, the Journal of Cannabinoid Medicine. And we produce the CBD Expo Tour, as well as Concentration and Extraction Conference. And we have been doing this for quite some time. We also have a Delta 8 conference coming up this year as well. We are back in Indy because when we were here pre-COVID, it was a great show. It was a packed show. And interestingly enough, this show is our largest show of buyers in our history. We have over 100 verified buyers coming to this show. And by verified, we vet them and we put them through a process. We make sure that they have a brick and mortar store, not just an online store, and that they carry more products than just their own or a select few. We have some big buyers coming to the show as well, which we have good relationships with that we get to most of our shows. But the number of buyers at this one was amazing. And so we don't know quite what's going on there, but we're happy to have them and happy to have a good show. And, I'm involved personally on putting every conference program together. So I pick the speakers myself personally and reach out to them. And so they're all handpicked. I've been in the industry a long time. And so we've got a great lineup of speakers in education. And some people who I've known for a long time came to help support us as well. So I myself am in this for personal reasons. We're not somebody who came into the game just to pinch a dollar because we saw it was trending. 11 years ago, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And so I was able to, Stanford had me on a ton of muscle relaxers and to the point where I couldn't even function. And somebody told me way back then to try CBD. And no one even had heard really of it at that point or what it did. And I did. And was able to completely come off the muscle relaxers that I was on. And so today I only therapy with CBD and Tysabri, which is my MS therapy. And I believe in it. I owe a lot to it, and I don't think that it's a miracle thing. I don't think that it helps everybody with everything, but I definitely know that it does help a lot of people with a lot of things. And so that's always been our mission on the road. Pre-COVID, I think we did 9 shows a year. This year we have 6, I believe, that we're coming back with. So we will continue to do this as long as we can continue to help people and uncover the many benefits that come out of the one plant. And so with that, I will thank you for coming here and joining us, and we will do the best we can to give you amazing information, updated research, everything like that. And if you guys need anything, please reach out to myself or any of my staff. We're all running around here. And once again, thank you so much for coming. And I will introduce your opening day keynote speaker, which I'm just amazing. And so I myself am just super excited to have him here. Dr. Jarrett Patton is a board-certified pediatrician, best-selling author, and runs a cannabis-based medical practice in Pennsylvania. He's been featured in Us versus the Plant, a film about medical marijuana. I can go on and on about him. He has a huge bio. So he had to cut that short to make it here with us. So glad you guys can hear him. It's not common people can get them here. So again, thank you, Dr. Patton, and it's all yours.
Thank you very much. Hello, Indianapolis. Thank you guys for having me. Thank you for having me at the CBD Expo. And I did have another talk in Atlanta this morning, but let me tell you guys, it feels great to be in front of people again. I mean, we're all here today. We're a little spaced out more than usual, but we are here. And we're here to learn, and we're here to learn from each other and exchange ideas. And this is what these kind of conferences are all about. So I'm thrilled to be here today with you guys as we talk about the stigma that is associated with this plant that does so many wonderful things for so many people. So people often ask and just wonder, so what was this Marijuana Tax Act in the 1930s, right? And I'm just going to tell you what was going on before then with cannabis, right? The scientists at the time, the doctors at the time, they were all looking at the medicinal value of this plant. And they were starting to find that it works. It works for a number of different things, but they didn't get very far along the research path when this act came up, which essentially shut down marijuana, it shut down hemp, it shut down a lot of things for a lot of people. And because has such a long-standing history, virtually nothing ever happened since that time. So it was like a pause. It was like a curiosity with the plant. Then it was like, well, all right, well, we can't use it. We can't do anything about it. Let's go. And not only was it just the way the act was put into place that prevented lots of people from having access to this plant, but then it was all of the things that went around it. So there was lots of public education about how horrible this plant can be, how it's taking our women, how it's being brought across the borders from people with brown skin. All of these things were placing fear in people's lives. So it went from curiosity and say, this could be another plant that helps treat people, to, whoa, I'm not touching that. I'm not talking about that. I'm not going to jail. Don't get me involved in any of this stuff. And therefore, this perception continues to perseverate all of these years later. So what we lose out on are decades and decades and decades of possible research opportunities here, because there were very few people working with these things to try to come up with this. And I have this picture up here because, there's research things that really came in recent history. So we're looking at the beginning of this timeline. I know it's small for the back, but it starts in 1988, which is about 50 years after this act. So it's like the scientist said, well, let's start looking at it again. The doctor said, well, let's start looking at it again and see what happens. And when I was in medical school at Case Western Reserve University, Harrison's Principles of Internal Medicine is one of the foundational textbooks that's still used today. So it really has lots of medical knowledge and science in there. It's written by several doctors, including back when I was in school, nobody knew who Dr. Fauci was, but he has a whole different name today. But he was one of the editors on this book. And this is where we learned in medical school and beyond about cutting edge medicine. This page that you see is mostly filled up with things that we knew at the time about marijuana, which was marijuana as a drug of abuse. Marijuana probably is a gateway to other drugs and drug use, and so people abuse this drug. So in this big book, it's literally this big. It's thousands of pages. There's not even a full page on marijuana for people to learn about and understand. And in fact, that last section in the bottom right-hand column goes on to LSD. So they're done with marijuana. They're already talking about something else. And so the cutting edge medicine at the time were just talking about marijuana-related emergency room visits. But okay, well, that's fine. They're talking about a drug of abuse. But the last sentence is what really killed me, that this was in a medical textbook, and this is the best that we knew at the time. But marijuana-filled cigars, from which tobacco was removed, known as blunts, were increasingly smoked by young adults in urban and some rural areas. So this is what they're teaching the medical schools. This is what the doctors who are treating you now may know. This is the extent of it. Because if you didn't look any further, well, you're like, I don't need to waste any brain power, and I just know marijuana is bad. That's all I need to know. If somebody's smoking marijuana, they need help. And this is what goes on today, folks, today. Then, of course, 2018 hit. Then it was like, well, we can look at hemp again. What is this CBD? Well, let's let people have it. Let's people use it, which floods to the market hundreds and probably thousands of products that, again, are coming out there. Some may be safe, some may be effective. We don't really know, but we're doing better now. However, there's still a lot of things that are coming to the market, and the general public, as well as the medical community, don't even have a full understanding of this. So then we talk about legislation. And you guys have seen these types of maps before, and this is the most updated one that I could find, but you see there's all different colors of shades of green on this map. Some places have CBD, some places may have medical marijuana, some places, I believe like Indiana, may only be able to use the oil and maybe not smokable hemp flower. There are all these different regulations that go state by state by state. It's like its own separate sovereignty, which we're not used to in this country. We're used to just freely traveling within the states, being governed by some pretty regular and similar laws. But if you are using medical marijuana or CBD in California, and you decide to go to, let's say, Idaho, might be a problem for you. So we have a long way to go with what we need to do as far as legislation to help us catch up to what we're learning in the medical space now. One afternoon, I was walking down the street after a conference and wanted to grab a bite to eat. So as you guys may know, when you're going to New York City, you're walking down the streets, there's restaurants that you may kind of walk up half a flight into. There's some you might walk half a flight down into. And so I opted to go down to see what was going in this bar. And it's kind of dark, and I wasn't even sure if I wanted to stay there. But somebody said, hey, we're having some ice cream today. If you'd like some ice cream. And I said, well, I'm kind of hungry. Let me stop and stand in line and get some ice cream and figure out what I'm going to do from here. I'm Jared. Hey, all right, we're like lost brothers. And I tell him I'm a physician. He said, wow, that's funny. I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be a physician. I applied to 20 different medical schools. I said, oh, wow, that's pretty cool. So what happened? I got rejected to each and every one of them. Said, sorry to hear that, Jerry, but well, this salted caramel core you're giving me right now, it makes my life a little bit sweeter. Looks like you like ice cream, and maybe it's making your life sweeter. Well, turns out this guy was Jerry Greenfield. That Jerry. He went on to tell me that he spent $5 on a correspondence course at Penn State University, learned how to make ice cream with his much less driven friend, Ben, and the rest was history. So I looked at him, I said, Jerry, you know, that worked out very well for you. I think you didn't need to be a doctor anyway. But even Ben and Jerry's is trying to get in on the CBD, and they are trying to figure out ways how to implement it in their products. But again, the laws make it difficult for people to actually do that from a national level. So let me give you another story. I want to talk about this guy. That guy was me when I was about 8. And all I wanted to do is drive a truck when I was young. I just wanted to drive a truck, ride around to different states, different cities, hauling the load that I have, and I came home one day and said, Mom and Dad, I want to be a truck driver. I want to drive a Budweiser truck. They kind of looked at me and, okay, son, if that's what you want to do, that's great, and you go for it. So that's what I thought I was doing with my life. It wasn't until much later that I thought to myself that, hey, I have an interest in science. There's some things that I like, and I went off to college to learn a little bit more about chemistry. But it was during that time that I said, nah, working in these chemical labs, I don't see that as my path in my future. I want to do something a little bit different and work with people. So ultimately, I went off to medical school and decided to become a pediatrician at this very trip when I was doing an international health elective in Ghana, when I was telling all these kids I played for the Sixers because I was so much taller than them, that I decided I wanted to take care of kids and went on to do that for quite some time. So I actually worked my way up from medical directors all the way to the head of a hospital, the president of the medical staff of over 1,500 doctors in Eastern Pennsylvania. So I was able to shape and affect policy. I was still able to take care of my patients. I was able to do a lot of different things that help people in the masses. So I thought I was living my dream. Till one day I had a conversation with one of the hospital attorneys that I saw most of the time, and he just looked particularly aggravated that day. And he said, Jarrett, I don't know how to tell you this, but you're under investigation. Investigation? What are you talking about? Pulls out his laptop, opens up a Facebook picture to me, and says, do you know this woman? No, I don't recall. Show me some pictures. No, I don't know who this is. I'm not on Facebook. What is this about? Well, you actually saw this woman's 9-month-old child, and she's saying that you were sexually inappropriate, and she's going to the police. Seems like the next thing I knew, I was feeling the cold steel handcuffs crushing the bones in my wrist as they led me off into a paddy wagon. I couldn't believe the turn my life had taken. Everything seemed like it was falling down. Everything seemed like it changed. But, of course, there was a media storm. Lost my job, lost my medical licenses in multiple states, and everything was crumbling down over these moments. Finally had my day in court, and the jury quickly saw that it was a scam, but I had to spend 18 months of my life trying to prove my innocence. Everything worked out okay in the end. I mean, I'm here in front of you guys. I'm still alive. I was able to write a few books, including my first one, License to Live, Primer to Rebuilding Your Life When Your Career is Shattered. But it led me on to a completely different career pathway. Was featured all over the country in different media outlets, was able to do a lot of good things in spreading a message of hope, endurance, facing adversity. So at this point, you guys are like, all right, where are we going here? Am I at the Cry For Me conference, or am I at a CBD conference? Well, we're at a CBD conference. And the whole reason of me telling this long story is this is the time period in which my medical knowledge transformed, because I had the opportunity to explore topics that I never explored before, including what's going on with this plant now. And now I've grown that industry into having and serving patients of my own in Pennsylvania who have disorders that can be treated by cannabis. And I'm happy to do that now. And it was learning more about this plant, more than that 3/4 of one page in a 2,000-page medical textbook. It was working with leading scientists, leading doctors, people doing research, and really understanding what's going on, what goes into the production of CBD, what goes into, now that we have the medical marijuana, what goes on with that, and learning everything almost from farm to the shelf. So it allowed me to have an opportunity that was much, much greater. And because of this, I was casted as the narrator for this film, Us versus the Plant. It is a documentary about medical marijuana. It was completed last year, and we're actually starting the relaunch of this film now. And I believe we have a special opportunity for you guys to learn a little bit more about it. But the real question today before us is, how do we change? How do we reduce this stigma? How do we change the way we feel about this plant collectively? Because we have people that are here representing themselves. We have people here that are representing companies. We can learn from each other in this point. And I'm going to give you the plan on how we reduce the stigma here. We have this plan. It's 4-tiered as far as I'm concerned. We're going to have some public education. We have to work with legislation. We have to have the allyship of each other. And we simply have to normalize it. It hasn't had the chance to normalize yet. So we're going to take this plan and break it down in detail so that you guys are ready to go ahead and press forward in Indiana and through the rest of the Midwest with the knowledge that you gain here today. So let's start with public education. All of us are coming at this from a different viewpoint. You heard Celeste talk about her battle with multiple sclerosis led her here. I have countless patients that have had issues with anxiety, have had issues with seizures, have had issues with a number of things that this plant actually can treat. But there's a whole nother segment of the population that doesn't know anything since 1937. And think most of the population wasn't even born in 1937. So these are legacies that are being passed down from generation to generation to generation. And at the end of it, we don't know. So our personal opinion is all we can sit. That's all we know. And so, hey, I'm against this. I think it's illegal. I think people just want to get high. There's no way there's any medical value for this. And on the other side, there are people like Celeste that we know have a tremendous outcome using this plant as a medication. And let's face it, most people would rather take a plant over a pill, right? Anybody rather take a pill over a plant? Nobody raised their hand except me, and I wouldn't rather do that, just to be clear.
I consider marijuana a medicine, which I take every day. I have various illnesses. One of the major ones is battling with cancer.
I tried all these different medications, different cognitive thinking therapies, different doctors, and then I met some doctors that said, hey, look, try medical marijuana.
It helps me with nausea, pain, headaches.
There are 3 species that are most commonly recognized: Cannabis sativa, Cannabis indica, and Cannabis ruderalis.
First of all, it's been used since 2000 BC. Okay, it was actually the first anesthetic used. At the turn of the century, in the 1900s, there was 2,000 different variations of cannabis medicinally available, manufactured by, I believe, 289 different companies.
Marijuana, the word traditionally refers to brown people, which were really Mexican people who came over 1920s, like before the Marijuana Tax Act was implemented. And of course, this country is not a stranger to racism.
But then we had Reefer Madness, and basically trying to scare everyone. The Marijuana Tax Act, and that basically was the end of cannabis.
I only want to know if it's lab tested, if it meets medical standards, and give me something to smoke. They say, oh, it's a gateway drug. Mm-mm. The first drug that people usually use is alcohol. And I think that opens you up to the world of other different drugs.
When you are suffering from ailments and are in need of relief, but are in an ill state with the side effects of chemically created substances, most would like to aid or prevent the pain with something that is natural.
It hasn't been justice for all at all. I personally have friends that are in jail to this day for marijuana, but it's not when you see stories of other races having some of the same things and not getting life. That shows you that it's not justice for all at all.
So that's just a little teaser of some of the things that the directors of this film really wanted to get out. They wanted to help inform the public and educate people that there probably is a different side to this whole issue that none of us knew about. And if that's the case, maybe, just maybe, I can change my mind to think a little bit differently of what we needed to do. All right, let me get off this slide. Sorry, guys. If you guys wanted to know more about the film, and that's not what I'm here, just simply text NDCBD to 44222, and we'll get that information to you guys. And I know the Indianapolis VIP kind of pre-show is coming up soon. It may even be this weekend, but we'll make sure we keep you guys in tune with everything that's going on. NDCBD to 44222. So let's talk about what we can do with our legislation. And this is what takes all of us, representing companies, representing individuals, particularly those that have medical issues that have been solved or greatly helped by the use of CBD. We need to get this message to our legislatures, and this is a picture of me in front of the Pennsylvania State Capitol, just doing that, being an advocate for some of these things, because, well, I can have two hats. I can be a user of CBD. I can also be a physician that knows the value, not just for myself, but of many people. And it's going to take a lot of us reaching out to our Congress people to say, hey, this is what I want. The polls already are there. In general, state by state, the population wants to have greater access to this plant. They want to have greater access to this plant. And if the laws are prohibiting that access, we need to tell our lawmakers we want to change. We want something different. You know, I've met lots of farmers across the country who are growing hemp right now, and this is their livelihood. And if we're able to extend that to use the plant for all of us, it's going to be there. So I'm going to encourage each one of you guys to talk with some of your local legislators later. Talk with some of the state folks. When these bills are coming up in your individual states, particularly here in Indiana, you guys have to speak up, because there's going to be a lot of people speaking up for 1937. Why is this even an issue? We don't want this. We don't want a country full of druggies. See, we're lucky. We know there's a lot more to it than just that. We know there's a lot more to it. So I'm encouraging all of you guys to work with your local legislations. And that's really what we need. I recently had to sit down on the left with Dr. Jocelyn Elder. She was the first woman Surgeon General in the United States. We had a great conversation talking about a number of different things. But even as she served in the 90s, she already knew about medical marijuana, and she knew that cannabis really could be an ally for us. In the middle, we have Dr. Drew Pinsky. He's a pretty famous TV doctor, and he shares some of these same views about cannabis and knows that cannabis can work. And when I had the chance to talk with Dr. Oz by Zoom in that final picture, he had no qualms about it. He knew that cannabis not only has an indication for a lot of people that we know about, there's a lot of potential out there for a lot more people to get to where they need to be. So we're getting spokespeople, people that have large followings. They're speaking up, they're speaking out. And these are professionals and respected in our community trying to talk about the science. So we can leave the politics to the side of this and say, you know, a lot of times it's that personal belief, and people just speak on what they believe, and they may not know anything. This is a clip from the Peter Tosh Museum in Jamaica, where some of the film was shot with the director of the film, Dr. Centrell Crawford. And one of the things learning in Jamaica, which has a huge cannabis culture, as you know, that, well, the laws are still weird down there about it. I mean, kind of looking from the outside, it seems like everybody's taking the effects of cannabis in Jamaica, but it's not really that cut and dry. In fact, some of the experts and leading scientists there wouldn't even speak on camera for fear of what it would do to them if they really spoke their true mind about this. So there is stigma everywhere, everywhere, even in places where we think that we wouldn't. So where do we begin with allies? And particularly, how many of you guys are here representing a brand today? Raise your hand. Yeah, there's a bunch of you guys here representing brands. This particularly is where you guys come into play, because now you guys have a company, you have a brand behind you, you guys are doing something in the cannabis space. And so again, it takes individuals, it takes maybe professionals and scientists, it also takes the brands, because these are businesses that are surviving and thriving around cannabis. And if we can partner as individuals with you as a brand, and if brands are engaging, and really brands need to be responsible for their own plan, and many of you guys are doing that with public education, talking with your legislatures, having allies with people in your community. And then we'll get to the end in just a minute. But you brands, I'm speaking to you here. You need to create allies, and allies with each other, because it's not something that one single brand will be able to rise to the top. And at some level, we're competing with each other, but at a much greater level, we need to work together. We need to work together and with each other, because as multiple brands stand up, the voice gets louder. As multiple individuals stand up, the voices get louder. And this is where we go. And this is going all the way from the farm, all the way through the product line. So make sure, if you guys are a business, you come up with your own plan for public education, a plan for working with your legislatures, a plan for normalizing conversations, and becoming allies with other brands, even on a level where you guys can sit and speak to a legislature. That's going to take you pretty far. People just need to have heightened awareness and more education in this. And then finally, let's talk about normalization. You know, I looked at this picture and I said, well, the woman sitting in the center, does anybody want to smoke some weed? And then that guy in the red sweater, he's saying, yeah, she does. I don't know if I do. And, you know, and we get that kind of discussion like it's something taboo. You know, it's that whole thing of, you know, you want some weed? And you're meeting somebody in a back hallway, something. Hey, I have this hemp flower over here. You want to come get some? And it's almost like we're hiding in the shadows over this. And it shouldn't be that way. But this is where the stigma is great. It takes a lot of personal investment, a lot of personality to stand up and just say, hey, this is no big deal. This is no big deal. So I'm challenging all of you guys today to normalize your conversations around what we're talking about. When we're talking with CBD, when we're talking about medical marijuana, when we're talking about the plant in general, let's just make it normal. If we make it normal, then other people won't hear us whispering down the hallway about weed. It makes a difference. Often, I mean, how many times have you heard this? Even if you're talking to a legislator, or even if you're talking to somebody. Yeah, people are laughing because I bet you've heard this before. People just want to get high. People just want to get high. Well, yeah, maybe. But is that what it is? Or do people just want relief? Do they want access to something that can ease their medical conditions, that can ease their pain, that can ease something bothering them in their life? Do they just want to get high, or do they just want some relief? It's no big deal, right? I'll give you guys one other example. Recreational. Well, that map that I showed you guys earlier, there are a number of dark green states, and including one to the north of us here in Indiana, Michigan. Well, they have recreational marijuana. Huh. Recreational. What do we mean by recreational? I don't get that. I mean, is it like a hobby? Well, maybe to some people it is. But at the end, I think they just want a relief. But you know, I woke up with a headache today. I had that early talk, and I just took some recreational acetaminophen today. Has anybody ever talked about it like that before? No. So maybe if we change the way we think, we say, oh, maybe I'll just take something over the counter for it. That has a completely different ring to it, right? So it is just, these are just a couple of examples that cannabis plant a long way for a lot of people to come, and for a lot more people to benefit from the magic that happens with CBD. So as you guys are walking around today, you're going to be going to a bunch of different great lectures. You're going to be meeting with a bunch of different scientists that are walking around. And remember, this is a largely cannabis-friendly environment. So you don't have to whisper. You can actually have these conversations loud and proud in the middle of the hallway, out in the parking lot. And there are going to be a lot of people that are here to help you. So I'm taking my hats off to you. I'm commending all of you guys for getting up, starting off your day, first things first, being here today, trying to change your mind. And I want to encourage you. There are so many great scientists. There are so many great brands here. I want you guys to take your time and enjoy this moment that you have this weekend here in Indianapolis, because, well, come Saturday, Sunday, when you're headed home and you leave these walls, people may not know what over-the-counter cannabis is. It's something they may have just learned today, and they're still thinking maybe it's recreationally used. But the good thing is the recreational acetaminophen worked for me, and I'm feeling good today. I am challenging all of you guys to make your plan today. Start with that public education. Start with the legislation. Form allies while you guys are here today. This is the best time to do it because we're live and in person. We're not in a Zoom room. We're not in some fancy virtual platform anymore. You can well, at least elbow bump somebody. You can do this, and this is the time to form these relationships. So I thank all of you guys today for having me here. It's wonderful to be back in Indiana, and I want to have all of you guys make your own plan and make this plant available for many more people. Thank you all. Yeah, I have a few questions, a couple minutes. Will it?
Yeah. Anybody hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. If we wanted to become more active in our own states as far as legislation is concerned, I live in Louisville, Kentucky. You know, a ton of hemp is grown there. There's some legislation on the books, but we are still predominantly a red state.
Yes.
How do we become more active in that and kind of get that voice out there as far as legislation and education?
Great question. Thank you for asking that. So it starts with you as an individual, finding out who represents you as an individual. And if you find that, they always want to hear from their constituents. But in addition, and it really can be telling a story, how maybe this changed your life or how you've seen it change other people's lives around you. Coming to them with a story is much more impactful than coming in with a stack of facts and figures for them to go through. They're not going to be as receptive to that because, well, somebody else will end up reading it. But if you have a personal story or a story of someone you know, they may have their own personal views about or against marijuana. They may be thinking 1930s, which is common in all across the country. If you get to them and you can sit down and have a one-on-one, if you work with a brand, this is where the allyship is important. So if you can find some local farmers that can be an impact with you and come in and talk about what this plant has meant to their livelihood, that's another story that can be told. So if you walk in even by yourself as one voice, or you come in with a couple of others where you have farmers or processors or brands on the end of the line, create those allies today. So if there's anybody else from Louisville, Kentucky area, we're coming to find you today because we need to create those bonds, and that will get that message across. In Pennsylvania, for instance, the lieutenant governor went to every county in the state having a forum on cannabis, wanted to hear from the people. Overwhelmingly, the people that showed up were like, please, can we move this down the road further? Can we get access to more people, reduce the legislation and the bar that's held to us to get this? And he heard it directly from the people. And so it takes someone really to be able to open their mind, but even if it's one individual, start with an impactful story and then talk about what has changed since the 1930s when this plant was prohibited. Thank you. Any other questions?
More of, can you hear me?
Yes.
More of like, just to piggyback what you said about the stigma. You know, I have people, you know, my friend's wife stressing over the pandemic. I need a Xanax, and nothing against Xanax. Xanax works and things like that. So why don't you try an edible? Like, you know, nah, I don't want to try that. And I'm saying Xanax comes with a lot of things if you get into it. But yet this other thing that's pretty safe has such a stigma so strong, you'd opt for something a little bit more pollutant in it, so to speak. You know, it's amazing. So
you're absolutely right, and that's tough because a lot of times, because the way pills are put into our society, well, they've been tested and tried, and yes, pills have side effects. We know that, and I chuckled because you're exactly right. It may start with, I want some Xanax or something else, but we're learning the same thing about this plant now. And the problem is we don't get a chance to talk about it. It doesn't get out there enough. And so people are reaching for pills and taking pills, but then they say, no, I don't want to take cannabis. I don't want CBD. I don't want any of this stuff. and it really makes it tougher for all of us as we go forward. So one thing to say with all of that stigma that's involved there is when people are talking about pills and using pills, I mean, there's one that comes to mind in very recent history, Purdue Pharma, that was in the middle of all of the opioid epidemic, right? And well, we thought that this was going to be great for pain, but ends up, yeah, it is great for pain, but it's great for addiction too. So these are the kind of things that we have to be careful of when people start talking about that. And then we know that even the plant, yes, we didn't get into that today, but yeah, there may be some side effects associated with that as well, but it's just a risk. And certainly plants over pills works well in my book. I think there was another question.
Sure how much time we have for this, but I'd love to get your experience with legislation. I've read the Indiana laws, and they are so um, confusing, is to say the least. They don't really have the right vocabulary, and you don't know how to enforce them. And so how do you get involved where you can get to the point where you can help the legislators write the law so that it's clear and they're using the right terminology and that type of stuff? What's your experience?
Yeah, you're right. And laws are rarely written clearly so that people can understand them. And that's what makes courtroom drama great, I think. But with working with the legislation and getting laws, ideally they need to conduct a panel, and it needs to be comprised of experts. And sometimes they don't take that additional step and say, well, let's go get some people that really know about this plant from several different ways. Let's talk to the farmer. Let's talk to the doctor. Let's talk to the pharmacologist. And we build a group of people that can talk about this subject matter in a number of different ways that makes a much more comprehensive plan. Sometimes it just gets to be pressure. And as we know in politics, as laws are written, there's a lot of give and take and push and pull. So, okay, well, we'll let them have CBD oil, but we're going to put 32 cents extra on the gasoline tax. You know, I mean, it's stuff that is completely irrelevant, which boggles it down because we don't get it under one issue. So when we work with the legislation, it has to be around a singular issue and how we can move forward. And again, you're gonna just like I had to educate myself as a physician, you're gonna have to do a lot of education with a lot of the legislatures, because sometimes they just think on their personal belief and they don't get beyond that. Any other questions? Yeah, for me, it was just the opportunity to, he said, after the big ordeal in my life, you know, what was it that really, my aha moment to really focus on CBD and medical marijuana? It was really out of curiosity. And it started as curiosity, but then I said, well, you know, as I learn about this and as CBD products came to the market, it was an easy opportunity for me to actually try some of these things. And I could feel how it would change my mood. I could feel some of the things involved in it. But all of that drama just gave me the chance to learn more. So as I turned the page on that medical book I showed you guys, it's like there's so much more to know. There's so much more to learn. You know, so many details about this because the science is catching up. And in fact, the science is way farther advanced than what our laws are and what some of the public perception is. But to answer your question, it was all about the opportunity to learn more and grow myself during this time. Thank you. It's great being here with you guys today. I hope you guys learn a lot over these next 2 days. There's going to be a lot of people. I'll be around this week. We can have further conversations in the hallway, and I won't be whispering. Thank you, guys.